Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we are going to be trying to cover a lot of ground here. There's 3 mantras that we're trying to cover, and 2 of them are related, and the next one kind of starts to introduce another topic. They're all related, but they're focusing on different things. So I would like to begin by saying, and the question that you just answered is related to what we're going to speak about today. But what we're going to try and communicate today is how we can make every activity spiritual activity, even those activities that are our day-to-day activities, how we can make them spiritual and therefore derive spiritual benefit, get spiritual benefit from even those activities that we would consider our normal activities or our day-to-day activities. This is actually, and this will come up in your Bhagavad Gita class. This is kind of a new concept for us in the it's not a material concept, and so it's kind of a new concept for us in the world in which we live, the material consciousness in which we live. And this will come up in the Bhagavad Gita in the first 6 chapters. You'll notice that Arjuna, in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a number of chapters where he's asking some particular questions at the beginning. And he's kind of going back and forth between this concept of doing something and not doing something. And he can't quite understand if he's supposed to do something or if he's not supposed to do something. He can't quite figure out what the spiritual path is. So, and this is it's a big question within spirituality, because there are a lot of spiritual paths that they like, for instance, Buddhism, the ultimate goal is no activity. There's also within the Vedic paths, within the paths of the people who follow the Vedas, there's also this concept of oneness, that at the end, the perfection of spiritual life is to become one with everything and thereby stop all activity. And this is coming from a concept that we're gonna cover as we go through this. And this is you can see on the page there: karma, akarma, and vikarma. These are 3 types of three activity. Activity can be categorized in 3 ways. The nice thing about the Vedas is that they deal with the principle of things, and then it applies to a lot of detail. So there's not so many things that you have to know. You just have to understand the principles, and then you can apply it in all other spheres of life. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with activity today. That's going to be one of the main focuses of the class. And it's one of the main focuses of what is being talked about in these texts of the Isopanisad. So in activity, the most important point of activity is consciousness. And this relates to the question you just answered, and I'm just going to give a little elaboration on that. Consciousness. So there's few different aspects to consciousness uh, when we do an activity. One is knowledge, being aware of how things work. So for instance, I'm going to use an example of cooking because I think it's something that we can all relate to fairly easily. If you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you have to have knowledge of the processes of cooking. So like, for instance, you got a carrot, you want to cut a carrot, you need a knife. You don't use a spoon, you don't use something else. You also have to know like how long you cook the carrot, how does a carrot cook, how do you spice a carrot, all that kind of stuff. You need knowledge of the processes of cooking to attain your desired result. So that's one aspect of activity. In any activity that you do, that aspect of knowledge has to be there if you're trying to get a particular result. So that's one aspect of consciousness when it comes to activity is the knowledge of the processes. Another aspect is that while you're cooking, you have to be aware of you have to do things in a timely manner. You have to be present. You have to be present in the as things are going on. You know, somebody phones and you take the phone and it ends up being a 5-minute conversation. You come back, all the water is gone from the pot, whatever you were cooking is burned. So you have to be present in the moment while you are doing any activity if you're trying to get a particular result. So, and yeah, so these are some of the aspects of activity and specifically how consciousness is the most important factor of an activity. So does that make some sense so far? If you just nod your head yes or no, I can kind of okay. So we're going to take this example. So the consciousness is important. So now we're going to take this example and we're going to kind of blow it out on a larger scale. So when we come to any activity that we do, and there's 3 things to be conscious of. And this also relates to, we can relate it back to cooking, but there's 3 things that one always has to be conscious of. One is the material situation, how it works. We need to have knowledge of how the situation works, and everything, as we're learning from the Isopanisad, everything operates under the arrangement of Isopanisad says the Ishavasya of under the arrangement of God. Everything follows certain laws. So we can see in science, like as science goes along, they're discovering different laws. You know, at a certain point in time, they discovered the law of gravity. They discovered this law. They discovered that law. So the Vedas describe that the world in which we live, everything operates under particular laws. Even cooking, in order to get the result that you want when you're cooking operates under certain laws, and it works every time. If you do it properly, if you do it according to the laws, then it'll work every time. So this is one thing that we need to be conscious of when we're doing any activity. If we're trying to get a particular result, is that we have to be conscious, meaning we have to have knowledge. We have to have knowledge of how the material world, the world in which we live, how it works. We have to have knowledge of that, and we also have to have, when we're actually doing the activity, we have to be in the present, aware of how the things are working so that we can react and do the proper things at the proper times when we're actually engaged in the activity. So this is one thing that we need to be conscious of, is the world in which we live, the laws which it operates under. Another thing we have to be conscious of the other two things, they come into play when we are in terms of our spiritual, if we are have some spiritual aspiration, these other two things come into play. And actually, this is what we've been learning in the previous mantras of the Isopanisad, is that according to the arrangement of the world in which we live, the purpose, or the purpose of this human form, the purpose of the human being, is to inquire into the absolute truth and pursue spiritual life. Actually, human life, Isopanisad was describing earlier, is meant for spiritual realization. So if we're going to do that, if we're going to follow the arrangement of nature, then there's three things that we have to be conscious of. Not just how the world in which we live works, but we also have to be conscious of God, and we have to be conscious of ourselves and how those three things relate. Who am I? Who am I? Who's God? And the world in which we live. What is it? How does it work? And how do these three things relate? So this is the knowledge that actually the Isopanisad is giving, and this is the knowledge that all the Vedas are giving, is knowledge of these three things. And when we get into mantra 4, we're actually going to see how, when we say, Srila Prabhupada describes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the preface or the introduction, how actually God is not really a good word. It doesn't encompass everything. He says the absolute truth. This actually is what we're trying to understand. And the absolute truth in the mantra 4, it gets into describing how the absolute truth means not just God, but God and his energies. Just like you have fire, and then you have heat and light. So heat and light, they come from fire, and there's no meaning, they're connected to the fire. The fire is the source of the heat and light, but so they don't stand on their own. They have the source, but at the same time, if you have fire, you automatically have heat and light. So similarly, when you have God, you automatically, his energies are there, and his energies pervade everything. And this is what's described in the 4th mantra. So we won't get into that too much now. We're going to continue on this train of activities. So does this, in terms of the knowledge, when we perform an activity, this being conscious of how the material situation works, what's my relationship with it, and what's God's relationship with it. Does that make sense so far? Getting a little nod there, I think. If
there's a question in the chat.
Oh, good. Yes, please. If
Ahead,
anybody has any questions at any point, please don't be scared to interrupt. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I was just, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's good.
This is like the internal material and external potencies, like in chapter 4 that they were talking about. That's basically what you're referencing there, right?
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, and so in that, is that also in the reference of like, who am I? Like it's in terms of where we all relate in those three aspects, right?
Yes. So so you have the internal potency, external, and the marginal potency. So we we, the living entity, is known as the marginal potency because we have a choice whether to live in the material or the external potency or the internal potency. So that's what's meant by marginal, is that we have a choice to be in either. By nature, the marginal potency is spiritual or internal, and therefore we're happy when we're situated in the internal potency, but somehow or other we find ourselves now in the external potency. So by the external potency means the material world, which is essentially dead matter. And then the internal potency means the spiritual potency, which is what the spiritual energy or the spiritual world is composed of. So we live in the material world, and there's also a spiritual world. And
You mind if I?
does
mind if I
that
give
is
a little-
just does that answer the question, Mike?
Yeah, well, is like, so when you're saying on the, so we basically have a foot in both, like in the external, and so we're balancing. Is that what we're like? The journey right now is basically trying to move more towards the internal from the external. Is that?
Can I give an example?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. We have the ability to be in both, but the point is to move towards the internal, which is our natural position. Dominar, go ahead.
The example that's sometimes given of the material world or the external energy is like a prison house. So the prison is, you can say it's within society, but it's a place where we put people to be outside of society. That's like a punishment. You're like, they go to this external place, which they're no more part of the society, to be rectified, to go back into society. That's the idea of the prison. So like, it's external to society. Then we go back into those are inside society, they're not in the prison. So similarly, the spiritual world is the internal potency of God. The external world is the external world is the material world, like a prison house. And we are like the citizens. We can either go inside or outside of prison, depending on our actions. The marginal potency in between.
Thank you. So yeah, so so activity, we can perform anything can be a spiritual activity. The only difference between a material activity and a spiritual activity is our consciousness. So if we're conscious, and this is the point that Prabhupada's making in these purports here, that if we're God conscious while we're doing our activities, then we're actually situating ourselves, as you're saying, Mike, in the internal energy, which is our natural position, and this is what actually brings us happiness. Whereas if our consciousness is material, then the result is suffering. So this is further elaborated, what this consciousness is. So this is actually, these first three mantras, this is the main thing that it's trying to teach, how to do our activities in the correct state of consciousness. And this is based on this word, the Sanskrit word Ishavasya, which means the proprietor, how God's the proprietor of everything. So how does this relate to us? So when we do an activity, anything, we're doing it to get a result. Why do we want a result? And when we get, why do we want a result? So essentially, I want a car, I want a house, I want this, I want that, I want a nice meal. We want a result because we want to enjoy the result and be happy by enjoying the result. So this idea of proprietor, when we do something, we go to work, we get our money, and then we claim ownership. We become the proprietor of that money, and then we buy a house. I'm the proprietor of this house, or we get a car. I'm the proprietor of this car, or, you know, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. So what follows naturally from thinking that something belongs to me is that I have the right to enjoy it. We don't go over to, like, I don't go over when I hear that Damodar's gone, him and his family went on vacation somewhere, then I don't go over to his house and like sit in his living room and turn on his TV. I don't think he has a TV, but turn on his TV and watch a nice movie, because it's not my house. It's not my house. Huh?
You better not.
Exactly, because it's his house. So this sense of proprietorship, when we have this sense of proprietorship, it leads to this sense or this right to, that I have the right to enjoy something. So Isopanisad, in the very beginning, it's giving knowledge of who God is and who we are. So it's saying, actually, God is the proprietor of everything. So naturally what follows is it means that everything is meant for his satisfaction. And this was brought up in that analogy of the body, how the hand is meant to serve the body. So that's our position, is that nothing actually belongs to us. And therefore our natural position is that we're supposed to use whatever things we have, whatever things, our house, our material things, but also our knowledge, our body is supposed to be used for the satisfaction of the whole, or for the satisfaction of Krishna, of God. And this is what is satisfying to both him and to us. So this is actually a very, this point of proprietorship, this is a very, very, very fundamental point that the Vedic literature teaches, and that the Isopanisad teaches. And when we do our activities, so this is actually what I'm describing now, and it's described in the purport. This is actually known as Akarma. Akarma, which it means that you do an activity, you get a result, but you're not doing it because you're not doing it so that I can enjoy the result. The result is not for me, but actually I'm doing it so that Prabhupada calls them God-centered activities, so that Krishna can enjoy the result. So this is what is known as akarma. Within the material world are the other two things, which is karma and vikarma. So karma means simply that we follow the laws of God, but we want to enjoy the result. So we do things in a proper way. We do things according to the laws, and what that means is it's based on principles like nonviolence, for instance. So we do things in such a way that nobody else suffers. So this is the Vedas. This comes up in mantra 4 also, and this is the theme that we're going through, is that because we're limited, because our ability to understand is limited, we don't understand fully how the world in which we live works. But that's the knowledge that the Vedas are giving, is that knowledge about how the world works. And so when we follow the path of the Vedas, this is known as karma. It tells us how to do things in such a way that, for instance, other people don't suffer. Everybody gets this is in the beginning, everybody gets their quota. Everybody gets what they need. Not necessarily that we all get what we want, but we all get what we need. So I think there's a famous song that you can't always get what you want, but get what you need. So this is karma. This is karma. Doing our activities, but we want to enjoy the result. That's karma. So this is in the material world. Vikarma means we want to enjoy the result, but we don't care for how things are supposed to be done. We just do it however we want. So karma is actually purifying and elevating for the consciousness, and vikarma brings the consciousness down, because we're not acknowledging that there's somebody in control of the situation and in control of the material world. We're not acknowledging that there's laws in place and that we're not accepting any authority. But akarma means that we're thinking that I'm doing this, we're doing the same things. We can be cooking, whatever we're doing in our day, because everything we're doing for some result, but we're thinking the result's not for us. It's actually meant for God. So this is actually a very, very Bhakti yoga is applicable. There's no time, place, or circumstance it can't be applied. And we're going to get into the result of that, applying this. But I just want to, there's one more point on this akarma. Prabhupada, he makes the point in the purport that, okay, so all my activities are, I'm supposed to do all my activities and the result's not for me. So the thing is, we've been in the material world. It's described in the Vedas. We've been in the material world a long time, and that our mentality is one of enjoying, controlling and enjoying. And so it's hard to get out of that. It takes some time. So Bhakti Yoga is not a one way or another way. It's actually a gradual process of coming to the full realization of how things are. So Prabhupada says that we are kind of selfish by nature here in the, actually by nature we are, but here in the material world we've been cultivating that. So we may think, like, we may do something, okay, I want this car, you know, I want to have a Corvette or whatever, but okay, I want it, I want to enjoy it, but when we get it, at least we can use it somehow in the service of God. Like, for instance, maybe we can give Damodar a ride or something, because Damodar, I know he's a devotee, he's a servant of God, so maybe he'll get some enjoyment from riding in my Corvette. So this is a bit of a stretch, but the principle is that, okay, there may be certain results that we want from our work. We want them, but we can offer at least some of them in service to the absolute, or the activities that we do. We may be attached to doing a certain type of activity. We like to cook, or we like to build things, or we like to, so many things that people like to do. We like to teach. So it's okay, we can do these things, but we should somehow see how it's connected to God's service. So we can cook, we can offer our food, we can teach, but we can teach other people about God consciousness. So everything can somehow or another be connected. And this is what Bhakti Yoga is. This is what Akarma is that even though there may be some attachment to enjoying there, still we can connect it somehow. And by connecting it, we actually make spiritual advancement. And Srila Prabhupada, he describes in the end of that purport how the result of that is that we save ourselves from going back into the cycle of birth and death, and having to wait again to get a human form of life to again pursue God consciousness. But by doing this, even a little bit, we even if we don't finish, if we don't finish the spiritual path in this life, we can take it up again in the next life. So I just want to see with you guys if this is making sense in terms of understanding akarma, which is, Prabhupada says, God-centered activities or God-conscious activities, akarma, vikarma, and karma, which are materialistic activities. Just want to see, is this making sense to you guys? The main point being that karma and vikarma is that we do things for our own enjoyment, and akarma means we're doing something and we're giving up the result for the God's enjoyment or for the absolute. Is that
just a technical thing? I don't know if you mentioned it. That akarma, the a before the karma is like a negation,
right?
Of karma. So it means like non-karmic activities.
Right.
Just a technical
Thanks.
thing I want to say.
Is this connecting with you guys? Okay, getting a nod there from Jed. And the other aspect of karma and vikarma, and this goes back, Mike, to what we were talking about, how the marginal potency, who we are, we're actually meant to live in the internal potency. It's like a fish in water. If you take a fish out of water, you can do whatever you want. The fish will never be happy. But if the fish is in water, then the fish is happy. So we're meant to live in the internal energy. So karma is the way of doing things that life will be perfect. You know, like you never have any arguments with your wife, your kids, your family. You have a nice house, nice car, everything's perfect, no problems your whole life. You go through your life, but there is one problem. At the end, you have to give it all up. You know, everybody's got to die at some point in time. So your life's perfect, but still there's a problem. You have to give it all up. You can't take any of it with you. So this is karma. Karma is like people are trying to enjoy in this world, and then at the end they're like, oh, have to give it all up. So this is actually most of us are in this situation. We're trying to enjoy in this world. We're trying to enjoy the fruits of our work. There's a class of people who they realize that I've been trying to enjoy, and it just never happens. Somehow I get the car, I get the house, you know, I'm never completely satisfied. So this is what we would call the spiritualists or the philosophers. And so they decide that, okay, so all this activity, it just brings suffering. So I should just give up activity. So this is Buddhism. This is impersonalism. They just decide that, oh, because these activities don't bring enjoyment, then I should give up activity and then I'll be happy. But the point is made in the Vedas that this is actually also a material concept. It's just the negative material concept. I can't be happy by doing activity, so I'll just give it up and then I'll be happy. But it's just the opposite. So actually spiritual is beyond these opposites. It's beyond these dualities. So spiritual is actually something beyond this, and it's a matter of the consciousness in which we do our activities. So that's the main point there. And then, so mantra 4, yeah, I got a few minutes here. Mantra 4 just gets into if we've come to
three. Sorry, you covered mantra 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So mantra 4 just gets more into if we've this slide right here, Damodar. So if we've accepted this, if we've accepted that point that human life by the arrangement, like if we accept that this world has an arrangement and the Vedas give us the knowledge that by this arrangement, human life is meant, as it said here, as a vehicle for coming to full consciousness. If we accept that, or coming to God consciousness, then mantra 4 gives some more details of how to be, who God is, how to be God conscious. To be conscious of God means to be aware of who He is, also aware of who we are. And so mantra 4 gets into how to understand God. And this is what the Vedas is. The Vedas is actually knowledge that's coming from the absolute. Any knowledge that we come up with out of our own ideas is always going to be limited because we're limited. Whereas the absolute is unlimited. And so the Vedas is the knowledge coming from the absolute. So it's that unlimited knowledge. So if we want to know about the unlimited, then we have to hear from the unlimited. And so by hearing, we can know who God is, not by, there's no way of speculating, no way of, by the power of our intelligence, to figure out who God is. If that was true, then our intelligence would be superior to God. But the definition of God means that he's superior to everything. So we can understand by hearing from the Vedas. And one thing is understanding. So this is called jnana. And then the other thing is called realization, which is vigyan in Sanskrit. It means actual perception. So it's not just what's being described in the Vedas is not just knowledge. It's knowledge of reality. And if it's knowledge of reality, that means, if it's reality, it means it should be perceivable. It should actually, if it's actually how things work and how things are arranged, then we should actually be able to see it. So at the end of that purport, Prabhupada makes the point that in order to perceive this reality, in order to perceive these truths, that this is only possible by this process of akarma, or this process of bhakti. By doing our activities in this consciousness that I'm not the enjoyer, but that Krishna is the enjoyer, that God is the enjoyer. When we do our activities, we gain knowledge and realization. God actually reveals to us himself and also his energies, how everything works. So I'm going to end there. Did that anything? Is there any thoughts or questions on that?
So just something with the slideshow. Your the three main categories. You're in the slideshow, the three categories we spoke about: internal, external, and marginal.
Yes, yeah, we talked about that earlier. Yeah.
And Prabhupada says, and the Prabhupada says, there's unlimited energies, but they can be classified amongst
Into
these
three categories. Is that kind of is that making sense, or am I missing? Am I speaking in tongues here? Making
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mantra 4 says, although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. So what's the connection between Krishna being in his abode and yet being swifter than the mind and able to overcome all others running?
In the purport, Prabhupada describes that just because Krishna is in one place, he, by his energies, he pervades everything. So he's fixed in his abode, but at the same time, by his energies, he's pervading everything. Just like fire is fixed in one place, but heat and light is pervading. So that's one thing, but the swifter than the mind part, Prabhupada describes how this actually means that by our intelligence or our mind, we can never capture Krishna or understand God because he's swifter than the mind. Our mind will never catch up to him. He's always knowledge of him is always beyond what we're able to, yeah. So I just, I'll conclude here. I'm sharing this with you because I find it personally very exciting that when understanding that at any moment, at any point in time, everything that we're doing, even things that we may not find so much joy in, as we go through routine activities, if we get into this consciousness that this is not for my satisfaction, but if we get into this consciousness that this is somehow I have to connect this to Krishna, then I've personally found that getting into this consciousness is so enriching. It will completely, I guarantee it'll completely transform your life, and you'll feel very, very satisfied in whatever you're doing, whatever situation. Of course, it's a practice, so it takes time, but it is really a satisfying endeavor. Okay, Damodar, you can take it away.
Brihan, when I was
Yep.
a new devotee,
Yep.
a new devotee, I was told, I felt, not on a very transcendental platform, probably still am not, but anyway, I was given very good advice that you act on that platform and the realization will come. So just like you said,
Right.
even though the natural feeling or the mood at that moment may not be to do what we must do, our duty, whatever that is, if we act on that platform, then the realization comes. For example, I may not feel like chanting japa. I may not have felt like chanting japa this morning, but by applying myself and doing it, it actually became a very pleasurable experience within a very short period of time.
Right.
And even if it doesn't for that day, if we keep doing it, then it will follow, it will come. So that's a very important realization you shared.
And not just directly spiritual activities, but say like, we're gonna cook. We don't we have to cook every day. We have to eat something. We don't always want to cook. But if we can practice seeing how our cooking is connected to Krishna, then all of these other activities also, they will also become very, will experience joy in doing all of these other things also. So I guess there's some homework here, but the homework I'm going to give you is try to, as you go through your life this week, try to see how you can connect each of your activities, or whenever you remember, try to do an exercise and see how that activity can connect to Krishna. And I guarantee.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll try to do that. Thank you so much.
That's very.
So we decided to
advice.
within the hour, we've decided to give a little bit of time, maybe like 5 minutes at the end, to let the students answer the questions here. So it fits within the hour, and also to make sure that everybody does their homework. Yeah. And you can send it at my email, and I put my email in the chat right now. Okay, so here it is. And I'm gonna put some music on. Okay.
Can you blow it up so we can see it a little bit better? Make it bigger?
Damodar, were we just supposed to email it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I just sent it to you. I'd already done the first couple questions, so.
Awesome.
Also, for the optional part, when you're saying to memorize mantra 4, are you talking about in Sanskrit or like just the translation?
As much as you want.
What?
Whatever you feel comfortable doing.
I've been trying to practice it with that class I'm taking, right? So I've been reading along at the same time. So.
Well, think about it.
I was a teacher.
Think about it. The Sanskrit is only usually it's 32 syllables that you have to memorize. And the more Sanskrit that you memorize, the more you learn, and the easier it becomes.
I'm only on the vowels right now. I've only taken like 4. It's like 4 classes in, right? So.
You know,
And what's great,
there are some wonderful recordings of Sri Isopanisad, and you can play them like when you're driving or wherever, and you can gradually learn them just by hearing them over and over again. I was a school teacher in New Vrindavan, one of our communities, for many years, and the children took great pleasure in saying these mantras. And it's not like they made a big endeavor. They just heard them so often that eventually they knew them.
And that's what we have on the resource page. We have a few recordings. That's what I put there on the resource page. Yeah. So our time is over. So officially we're gonna end here. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to see your homework. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Have a good
Hare Krishna.
have a good evening. Have a good weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Haribol.
Hare Bol Jai. Hare Krishna.